Today, the theme of the day is moving past analysis paralysis. Working as an entrepreneur, this is one of the traps that I fall into fairly regular, is overthinking different business decisions and inherently then feeling the aftermath or the results of overthinking things. I've had the most or biggest growth periods when I've just made a decision and just went full bore ahead without necessarily having all the details in place. That's something that I tend to do, is get too much into the weeds, and it impacts the work I'm doing. So as I kind of jump into today, I want to do a little more background on this idea and somewhat document moments in my life where this analysis paralysis got in the way of the work I was doing. For the work today, and what I want to focus on for today, is I want to design a solo podcast format and outline the first 5 episodes. And for this, the reason I'm picking this specific exercise for this, the theme for today, is it forces me to not only brainstorm a high-level idea and strategy for executing and a path to potential monetization, but it then forces me, if I'm wanting to actually move forward with this, it's not just about the business side of this and more on content and just getting into it. So that's the plan for today, is just coming up with a line of business idea and not necessarily needing to flush everything out before jumping into some of the content that I would want to include in this endeavor. So with that, I'm going to jump into day 33 and I'll report back at the end of today. All right, end of day 33. And the theme for today was moving past analysis paralysis. And in working through this, or with this theme in mind, it made me realize how much this is infused into my life, where I overthink things and get stuck in the brainstorming phase versus execution in many times. And the realization from today is needing to take a step back and revisit my deeper values. And it's been a little while since I've done a values assessment. I've kind of built the framework for kind of how I make sense of my main value system and the direction that I want to take my life. And that was the point in today of realization that I need to do it again. And typically what I've been doing up until this year was, I would, at the start of every year, that was part of my planning for the years, I would do the values assessment and then leverage that information to create my plan for the year. And I didn't do that. So what I need to do is jump into that. And I don't know if that's something tomorrow or the day after, but that is something I need to get done. Now, if you're interested in having a closer look at this, I'm going to make sure to leave a link in the description below. If you're interested in going through this exercise as well. I found it very helpful in the past, and obviously realize I need to go back to it. Now, when it comes to the idea of moving past analysis paralysis, there are a few different thoughts I have in this space. Oftentimes I find myself overanalyzing, trying to create more effective systems to become more efficient, and ultimately I'm realizing that this is more busy work and not true work. And it's important to move past this way of working. There was a quote I saw yesterday, I think by James Clear, that basically said, whether or not your systems are the most well-designed systems, that part of it doesn't work. You can be somebody that still has these old ways of keeping yourself organized, whether on paper or whatever method you're using. The person that is the most consistent with their format of getting things done will get the most done. And the people that try and make their system the most efficient to work more efficiently end up actually working less efficiently. And I think that that's a key point to remember here. Is it's one thing to have a strong system and plan in place, and there's another to take action every step of the way. So not necessarily needing to have the whole story in place before taking action, is just taking that first step towards some sort of goal or direction that you want to take your project, your life, your relationships, whatever it is that you're trying to move towards. So that was a good takeaway from today. And the last thing that I want to leave on here is just a few different strategies to implement when it comes to moving past analysis paralysis. Okay, so the tips, and I've broken it down to 10 key tips to help you overcome the analysis paralysis. The first is limit your options. Second is set clear deadlines. Third is apply the 80-20 rule. And what does that mean? When it comes to the work you're doing, 80% of the outcome or the resulting thing comes from 20% of the work. So the key here is to focus on the key steps that bring the biggest impact. For me, this has been a huge one in thinking of how I'm prioritizing things, is thinking that, or remembering that sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest impact. The fourth is break down big tasks. And it's basically what I like to do in this space is take one small action to gain momentum. The fifth is practice good enough thinking, and this is always a hard one. I'm sure many can relate to this, of trying to make everything perfect when there is no definition of perfect for many people. So the idea here is focusing more on progress over perfection. 6 is use simple checklists or decision frameworks. This one has been very helpful for me, finding a way to gauge the importance of the specific task that you need to or want to get done. You can either, here's 2 different suggestions I had put down, is either use pros and cons for each or some sort of point system for the importance of task. 7 is time box your research. So when going into any project or task, having a research phase is important, but make sure that you time box that time so that you don't fall down the rabbit hole of research, which is an easy point in which you can do that process of the analysis paralysis, or where that can creep in. 8 is external perspective. So if there's a situation where you're unsure about a specific decision you need to make, and you've went through all these other strategies to help you, sometimes turning to external perspectives is a way to overcome that. In these scenarios, you're going to want to turn to someone you trust that understands your bigger objectives that you're chasing towards. 9 is take a micro action. And I think for this one, for me, is really, it kind of comes down to that breakdown big tasks. And the only reason that I put this here again is to really put emphasis on, for each of your tasks, what is the next actionable thing you need to do for that specific task to move that task along. That's kind of what I'm referring to when I say a micro action. And then the last one is reflect, don't dwell. It's very easy in situations where maybe you've made a decision and the outcome wasn't what you were hoping for or expected, and that could be another place where you overanalyze that result and get stuck in that analysis paralysis cycle again. So it's okay to reflect in those situations, but it's key to move past them and don't dwell. So yeah, those are the main tips for overcoming analysis paralysis. Now, when it comes to the work from today, instead of me kind of digging more into the idea of analysis paralysis, I wanted to just kind of show where my head was at and the 5 topics that I came up with when designing the solo podcast format and outline the first 5 episodes. And basically the topics for the first 5, what I put down here is The first one is the frequency of connection, how energy shapes our relationships. And I guess before I mention the other four, what I decided to do when it comes to the form and function and how I bring this content together, I've realized that writing is something that I really enjoy doing and want to implement this into the process of this podcast. So my thoughts and how I'm going to approach this is I'm going to write out the podcast ahead of time and then somewhat use that as a guide, read some of it, but also kind of improvise top of mind what I'm thinking about as well as I go through the podcast. When it comes to where I'm drawing this information from, I love reading and research. So in these topics, I kind of do deep dives into each of them, whether it's pulling from a book or different websites, research articles. I kind of use all three to tie this content together. So that's the mode I'm going to take for these podcasts. I'm going to target around 30 to 45 minutes per podcast and kind of use them as a tool for learning for me. And then obviously I'm going to share those experiences with others, or those learnings with others as well through this podcast. The second topic that I'm going to dive into in this podcast is finding your tribe, why the right people make all the difference. The third is the loneliness epidemic, why we feel so disconnected in a hyper-connected world. Number 4, vulnerability as a superpower. And then 5, aligning with your authentic self, the key to lasting well-being. And this for me, I think is the one I resonate with the most. I've kind of, as I went through in the design of the website and the content I release, has always been in this space of trying to make myself a better person and knowing that I'm not the expert and that I'm just slowly learning lessons along the way and trying to make sense of the world around us. And I'm kind of using this podcast now as a way to make sense of that. So I'm going to leave day 33 here. Basically what it is the foundation for a new podcast series that I hope to release in the next little while here, and excited for the learning journey that this project takes me on. So I'm going to leave day 33 here and we'll jump into tomorrow.